Hello everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. My name is Osereme, and in today's video I am going to be showing you guys how to go about the cutting and sewing of this beautiful A-line dress with a ruffle sleeve. Now I particularly love this sleeve and how I can actually style it in two different ways. So if this is something you're interested in, keep on watching and let's get started. Alright guys, to make this dress you will need about 3 yards of fabric. What I have here is 100% cotton Ankara and I have 3 yards. Now you will also need to get cover buttons made from whatever fabric you decide to use. So that was what I did here. Now lastly you will need to get crepe. I'm going to be using a black crepe. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. It depends on what you're going for. So these are the materials you basically need to make this dress. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up your fabric like this, border to border, just straight. And then you're going to come to one point of it and you're going to fold the fabric into two, just like you see me doing like this, like a triangle. Now, this is actually very simple. We're going to be cutting the front and the back separately. So just basically go ahead and fold it into two like this, like a triangle, like I've done. You can fold it in more depending on how big you are and what your body measurement is. All right, just fold it till you're sure it's going to give you your hip measurement and still some excess allowances. It's okay if at this point is looking something like this. All right, if you're trying to get it to fit your body shape and all of that, so it doesn't necessarily have to be pointed at the top. So now once you're done arranging your fabric like this, I have measured and I'm sure that this is going to do the front part for me and I'll still have some allowances, all right? So now the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is to divide my shoulder measurement into two. My shoulder measurement is 14 and that divided by 2 is 7. So I'm going to go ahead and just place it on my fabric randomly to be sure that wherever I'm starting, making my starting line from is going to be enough for my shoulder measurement. So once I'm through with that, I'm going to go ahead and draw out a starting line. This starting line can also be referred to as your shoulder line. So now after drawing out this first line, which in this case, in the case of making this dress, is actually the neckline, next thing I'm going to do is to extend my tape for the strap. All right, so I decided to extend my tape by 6 inches. You can see that 6 inches is exactly on that line. And then I measure down to the length that I want my Ankara part of the dress to be. So the Ankara part of the dress is supposed to be 34 inches. So what I'm doing now is I'm marking it out with 35. I'm making sure that I'm placing this 6 inches on that first line as I go along. All right. Okay, so that's 6 inches there at the top, and then I'm measuring the 35 inches as I go along. All right, so I'm going to measure this until I get across so that I have that nice, like almost looking like a circle curve going on. So this is supposed to be like this here. So now this is it. So now this is the body of the front pattern. All right, so now you notice that this dress has like a kind of curve in front. So what I'm doing is from this first line here, I am going to go up by about 3 inches and I'm going to mark it, and then I'm going to curve it nicely into the rest of the dress. So now this is it. Okay, we are done cutting out the front part. This is a very simple dress to cut out. Now to make sure that we're on the right part, I'm going to go ahead and place my tape again, making sure I'm leaving that excess, and I'm going to measure down to where my hip is supposed to be. So I measured my hip measurement divided by 4, and you can see that I have some more excesses here, which is just perfect. You can still do this on the area where your bust is supposed to be so that you're sure that what you're cutting out is going to be just enough. So with that being done, I'm going to go ahead now and cut out the front pattern. So now we are done cutting out the front pattern. I'm going to go ahead now and use this pattern here to cut out the back. Now for the back pattern, you're going to also fold your fabric like a triangle, just like we did on the front pattern. Now you're going to be placing the center front, which is the folded edge, very close to the folded edge of the fabric that you just folded in now. Like I said before, we're going to just be transferring the front pattern into the back. We're just making a few changes here and there. So I'm going to go ahead now and pin the front pattern down on this other new fabric. So now what we're going to do is to make the center back longer. All right, so from the folded edge here, you're going to come down by about 4, 5 or 6 inches depending on how long you want the center back to be. But I think around 5 inches is perfect, so I marked 5 inches here. So the only part that is going to be longer is the center back. All right, the sides are going to be exactly the same for both the front and the back. So what I'm going to do now is from these 5 inches I came down by on the center back, I'm going to connect a curve to meet the side. So the side will be exactly the same measurement, but the center back is where we have the longer length. So now once you're through drawing out the back, you're just going to go ahead and cut through the lines that you have drawn out here for the back pattern. All right, and then you just use the front to cut out the sides. The front of the sides of the front and the back are exactly the same thing, and also the neckline area as well. All right, so now when you're through with this, you're going to still extend your tape on that first line we made earlier on the neckline area, and then I'm going to measure down to my armhole depth. All right, so my armhole depth is 7 inches here. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and mark my neckline, how wide I want it to be here, which I have done. And then I'm going to connect from this neckline all the way down to the area I marked for the armhole. That's how simple it is. It is literally very simple. So if you want to know how wide you want your neckline to be, you can actually measure this on your body or on your client's body. So with this being done, I've drawn out my neckline and my armhole area. So I'm going to remove the front pattern from the back. Okay, you can now separate the two pieces, and now we're going to work on the front. So I'm going to be placing the black piece to design the center front here. So now this is the piece of black crepe that I've cut out here. All right, this right here is 4 inches wide, and the length is just from the neckline all the way to where it ends. It is 4 inches wide. So now once you're done cutting it out, just go ahead and fold this into 2 at the top and bottom, so that way you'll be able to get the middle of this fabric here, the crepe fabric. So now I already marked the middle of my front pattern as well, so I'll just place the middle of this black fabric and the middle of the bottom fabric as well, right sides facing each other. So it's best you make notches on both pieces, so that by the time you're done stitching down everything sits in place normally. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. So after pinning it down at several spots, right, what I'm going to go ahead and do is to fold this in like this nicely, and I'm just going to make a top stitch to secure it in place. Note that this is only going to be done on the front part. Pin it down first makes it very easy. Another thing you can also do is to use hem gum to hold it in place, iron it down first, but that takes a lot of time. But that was what I did because I did not want any issues with this dress, with this black piece at the center folding in any way. So I used hem gum on the inside to gum it in place first before I went ahead to make my top stitch, as you can see right now. After making the top stitch on both sides, you can see how it looks very neat. This is why I decided to just gum it on both sides before I stitched it down. So now once we're through with that, the next thing we want to do is work on the sleeves, and I've cut out this fabric here. So now the width of the fabric is 7 inches and the length, it is very long. This is because we're going to be making ruffles. So the length is 50 inches and the width is 7 inches. All right, so I cut out 2 of it for the both sleeves. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to be folding the edges, but before we do that, first fold this is one of the sleeves, fold it into 2 equal halves like this, and then you're going to fold it in again like this. So once you're through with this, you can go ahead and iron it out just like you see me doing like this. Now once you're through, on this edge here, you're going to come in by about 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So I did 1.5 inch here, and I'm going to make a mark, and from this point I'm just going to curve it nicely into the rest of the sleeve area just like you see me doing like this. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. Alright guys, so please remember that this is just one of the sleeves. So when you open it up, you notice that the edges are now like slimmer. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other sleeve as well. So now once you're through with this, what I'm going to go ahead and do now is to fold up the edges like this. I'm going to fold this area all the way to the end and do the same thing on this other side as well. And after which, I'm going to be placing a bias at the center. Now this bias is going to be serving as my elastic casing. You can decide to do this with the crepe fabric, or you can do it with the African prints, but I just feel like the bias will be easier to work with. So I'm going to be placing a bias at the center here all the way from the top down to the bottom. So guys, after I was done with that, this is what I had, okay? And this is the bias. The bias actually should be placed in front on the right side of the fabric. So now once you're through with this, you're going to pass your elastic through the casing that the black bias gave you. Now, because the black bias is not very wide, the casing is very slim. So I'm not going to be using my safety pin. I'm going to be using a tiny broomstick here to pass the elastic through the casing. So you're just going to pass it through like this and take it all the way to the end. So basically, you're going to arrange your ruffle as you go around, pull on it and everything. Make sure it is well arranged as you are pulling on it. So after you're done with everything, just go ahead and measure. Now remember, we extended our tape earlier when we started drafting out our pattern by 6 inches, right? Now 6 times 2 is 12. So that's going to be our strap for both the front and the back. Remember, it's just we did 6 for both, for just the front, and then 6 again for the back. That will make a total of 12. So you have to make these ruffles nicely, pull on it nicely until it gets to like about 12 and a half or 13 inches, so that it fits in perfectly when you put it on. All right, so if you extended your tape at the beginning when you were trying to take that neckline area by maybe 7 inches, so this ruffle should be about 14 inches. All right, so but because this was 6 when I started, this one right here needs to be 12 inches, so that when it comes from the back and comes to the front, it's going to fit in perfectly. So once you're through with this, just go ahead and cut off the excess elastic, and then you're through with this. I've also done the same thing for the other sleeve. As you can see, both of them are 12 inches long right now. So I'm going to go ahead and place them on our dress. So now to add it to the dress, this is the neckline area. All right, so what I went ahead to do was to cut out a facing, just like using the neckline area and the armhole area to just cut out exactly a fabric that is not as long as the dress itself, just like a short facing. So now once you're done cutting out a facing, you're going to go ahead and place your sleeve on the front pieces here. So on the front pattern here, so where the armhole stopped, I'm just going to place my sleeve here towards the neckline, and I'm going to go ahead and pin it down here. And then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Make sure you're placing the sleeves right sides facing each other. So once I'm through with this, I'm going to cover everything up with my facing, so that by the time I turn everything over, you will have your sleeve and the bodice looking really nice. So now I'll go ahead and pin the facing down to cover up all these places here. I don't want to waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. So now I'll go over to the sewing machine and make a stitch all the way around all these areas that are pinned down, and by the time you turn it over, you realize that the sleeve is sitting perfectly in place. So now guys, this is what we had after I was done stitching down the facing to cover up this area. You can see the facing here ironed towards the wrong side, and our sleeves are looking nicely sitting in place. So now we're going to be joining our sleeve to the back pattern. Now it's still exactly the same thing. Now you're going to place the back pattern right sides to face you, and then you're going to be placing the sleeves on it like this, right sides facing each other. Okay, just like we did on the front pattern. So I'm going to now pin the sleeves down on the areas where it's supposed to be, just like we did on the front, and after which I'm going to cover this with my facing and then go over and stitch down just like I did on the front pattern. Alright guys, so this is what I had after I was done stitching down the sleeves for both the front and the back, and you can see how nicely it looks. So if you open everything up, you can see the facing for the back now. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to join the sides, which is actually very simple. So align the sides from the armhole all the way to the end, just like you see me doing like this, and I'm going to go ahead and pin down the sides. So whatever you do on one side, you're going to do on the other side as well. So now I'm going to join the sides and then leave about 1 inch on this part, but on the other side I'm going to stitch it all the way to the end. Now I noticed that there's a bit of excess here. The back is a bit longer on the side than the front, so I just trimmed it off. So I'm going to stitch and stop somewhere here, so I have an opening here to join the bottom part, but for the other side you can sew it all the way down. So now I'm done joining the sides, and this is what I have. All right, now the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do was I measured all the way around the bottom part here, all the way around all these areas, to know how much fabric I'm going to be cutting out to use as gathers for the bottom part. Now when you measure all the way around the end of your dress, whatever you get, you should have at least times 2 of that for the crepe. All right, So let's say, for example, when you measured, you had about 60 inches, right? You should have about 120 inches. That's like 2 times of that, so that your gathers will be full. Okay, so which is what I have here. I have a very long one, more than twice of actually what I measured at. Now for the length, what I have here is about 8.5 inches, which is just perfect. I wanted to add 8 inches to what I had before, but 8.5 is not bad. All right, so now I've already made a gather stitch at the top, and at the bottom part I made a normal fold to secure that area in place. So now on the top where I made a straight gather stitch, now I'm going to start pulling on my gathers until I get to the end of the other edge. All right guys, so after pulling on the gathers, I made sure to check that it's going to go through all the way around the dress now. So what I'm going to do is, on the part where I had that opening that I told you guys not to sew fully, which is this part, I'm going to start placing my gathers. All right, so you're just going to place it like this, right sides facing each other, and you're just going to go ahead and start stitching this all the way around, and after which you just finish up the side, and there you go. So after we're done with that, this is what it looks like. All right, you can see the back is a bit longer than the front here. On the inside, I'm going to weave that later. All right, so this is what yours should look like. It's actually very simple. So now once you're through with this, you're basically done making this dress. The last thing I'm going to be doing is place my cover buttons here, and I'm just probably going to measure the areas where I'll place them. So I'll just place one here. I'm going to be placing about 5, and to place your cover buttons, you're just going to have to use your needle and thread. And trust me guys, that's basically all for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you find it helpful, and I'll definitely be seeing you guys in my next video. If you are still yet to subscribe to the channel, please hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.